Welcome to Mortgage on My Mind, where we take the mystery out of mortgages and make dreams of homeownership a reality. I'm Natalie Salins, a top 1% mortgage broker with 20 years of experience, based right here in sunny Los Angeles. If you've ever wondered about pre-approvals, appraisals, or what loan product is right for you, don't worry, I've got Mortgage on My Mind, so you don't have to. Each week, I'll bring you expert advice, real-life stories, and insider tips to help you navigate California's competitive real estate market with confidence. Whether you're buying your first home, refinancing, or just curious about how it all works, this podcast is for you. So let's talk mortgages, demystify the process, and make your real estate goals a reality. Ready to get started? Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mortgage on My Mind. We have an incredible guest with us today. Nick Prefontaine is here. He is a motivational speaker and an author and really a real estate expert. He's known for turning adversity into opportunity. After surviving a coma-inducing snowboarding accident at a young age, at 14, I think, he made a miraculous recovery using his signature S.T.E.P system, which we will talk about. He is the co-founder and CEO of Common Goal and a partner at Real Estate Coach, helping non-traditional buyers achieve home ownership through creative financing. And he also is a best-selling author and host of the podcast, Not Just a Transaction. So welcome, Nick. So nice to meet you.
So excited to be here, Natalie. I think we're going to have some fun.
Awesome. I can't wait. Well, tell us how you got into the business a little bit and, of course, what the S.T.E.P program is. I'm so curious.
Sure, yeah. I think the easiest way for me to tell you how I journeyed into real estate, how I got my start into real estate was going all the way back to a fateful day when I was at ski club with my friends when I was in 8th grade. And all my friends and I had brought our snowboard gear onto the bus so we could get ready, so we wouldn't miss a precious moment once we got to the mountain.
Yeah, yes.
And
God forbid.
exactly. And we got to the mountain. The rest of the class wasted time. They went inside and got ready, but not us. We were ready to go. So we headed right for the chairlift. And on the ride up, we noticed that it was very icy because it had been raining earlier in the day. So people were wiping out everywhere.
Ugh.
And the chairlift actually went right over the terrain park where all of the jumps were. And I knew as soon as I saw it that I had to go off the biggest jump in the terrain park. And that I was just excited for it. So I got to buckled into my snowboard, took a breath of that crisp winter air, and confidently charged towards that jump with all my speed. And going up to the jump, I caught the edge of my snowboard on the snow going up to the jump, and that's the last thing that I remember. So due to the severity of my injuries, they actually wanted to bring a helicopter to the mountain to rush me to the hospital. And they couldn't because it was too windy, so they had to send in an ambulance. And out of all the paramedics in the area, there was only one who could intubate right on the spot. And I needed that to be able to breathe. Lucky for me, he was one of the paramedics that showed up to the mountain that day. So there's always, when I retell this story, it's easy to remember for me because there are three things that I credit with being able to be here today and share this story with you and your listeners. That was the first one. The right paramedic in the county, in the area, was working that day and showed up to the mountain. Something else that I learned was that my goggles were the only protection that my head had. So they told me that with each hit after the initial impact, as I continued to roll down the mountain and continue to hit my head, my goggles moved to cushion each blow of my head against the snow and the ice at that point. So that was another thing.
Wow.
The third, once I got to the hospital, listen, I was out. I was in a coma, unable to communicate with anyone in the intensive care unit. And the only people who were allowed in my room at that time were my parents because of the severity of my injury. And each time the doctors, no fault of their own, they were just doing their job, treating me like any other patient, like a number, I guess you could say. They came into my room and they started sharing the not so good news, not so good news, not so good news in front of me.
And you
Because
remember that? You were cognizant at the time?
no, 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 I was
No.
out. I was in a
Okay, okay,
coma.
got it.
Yeah. And they started to share right in front of me. And my mom stopped them. She said, no, no, not in front of him, because she understood that even though I was in a coma, I was still taking in information. So
Totally.
she made the doctors step outside the room. And then once they were there, that's when they shared with my parents that I probably wouldn't be able, even if I came out of the coma, I probably wasn't going to be able to walk, talk, or eat on my own ever again.
Ever again.
Yeah,
And they think because you had like a spine injury?
yeah.
Okay.
Not a spine injury, but a serious, a traumatic brain injury.
Got it.
So I actually didn't break a bone. I didn't break a bone. I drank a lot of milk. I loved cereal at the time, so I didn't break a bone. However, my head and my shoulder, where I made the initial impact, were bruised beyond comprehension. So the doctor said, even if he comes out of his coma, he's probably not going to be able to walk, talk, or eat again. And because my parents didn't allow any of that information to get through to me, whether subconsciously or unconsciously, I was just able to treat it like any other situation.
Sure.
So a month later, I was in a coma for 3 weeks. I really don't remember a month because it was a partially induced coma because they had to wait for the swelling to come down in my brain because they were worried if I would wake up and panic, the swelling would increase and then I would have died. So it was a month later that I was transported to a rehab hospital in Boston. And that's where I began my journey. And that's where my real first memories started to come back. So it was right around this time that I started to unknowingly use a system that's a step system to not only make a full recovery, but run out of the hospital. And
Mhm.
that's what I teach to this day. It's a step system. STEP is an acronym. It stands for support. Make sure you have the support of your family and friends right from the start. This is going to have you falling back on relationships that you built prior to your setback. T is trust. Trust that once you take your first step, your next step's going to be available to you. And this also starts with trusting that voice that you have inside of yourself, that calling that you have inside of yourself. And
Mhm.
you want to follow that. And the reason I want to hit on that is because there are so many of us out there who we all have it. We all have that inner voice. However, there are so many of us out there who will discount it, say, no, no, not me. I could never do that. Or who would ever listen to me? Or I couldn't accomplish that. You'll discount it. You'll push it down. You'll push it away. However, you got to tune in and listen to that. And I can remember being a month around the same time. So a month after my accident, I was in a wheelchair at the time because if you remember, I had to learn how to walk again
Yeah.
and I still couldn't talk. So that at best it was a whisper. And I can remember overhearing my parents talking with my team of doctors and therapists. And they were saying, okay, what do we need to do to make sure Nick makes a full recovery? I heard in the back of my head, you're going to run out of the hospital. So then I was able to communicate that to my parents and the rest of my team, and that became our common goal. Back to the acronym, E is energy. So maintaining your energy allows your body's natural ability to be able to heal itself. Medication has the potential to get in the way of that. So
Mm.
the way I can best illustrate this is around the same time, a month after my accident, when I was transported to the rehab hospital, it was probably a little later than that. A week or two after being at the hospital, I was a few weeks away, a week or two. Time is compressed during that time, but a week or two from being cleared to walk on my own. I
Wow.
remember one incident when I would always have someone with me, and that was my support. So my mom would be with me during the day with her parents, my grandparents, most days. And then at night, my dad would come in and spend nights with me and stay in a cot next to my bed. So on the nights that he couldn't be there, Natalie, I would have my grandfather or an uncle. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I had to use the bathroom and I had to get his attention to help me to the bathroom because I wasn't cleared to walk. And
Right.
I remember leaning over my bed because I couldn't project my voice. I was saying, I call him Bub. I was saying, Bub, Bub. And he didn't hear me because it was a whisper at that point. And I was able to go to the bathroom and come back to bed, and nothing ever happened. But the hospital found out the next day and they freaked out because they're like, well, liability, and we can't have that. What we're going to do, we'll give him this much medication before bedtime, and that should calm him down.
Mm.
And my mom heard this and she was like, no, you're not. So just ask him not to do that. So that's what they did. And nothing ever happened again. But I think that's the perfect way to illustrate that energy
Yeah.
because if I didn't have an advocate there, they would have just gave me some medication and make the jobs easier, for lack of a
Right.
better term. So P finally is persistence. So once you get up, once you take your first step, keep getting up every day and taking your next step, no matter how small. And by continuing to move forward every day, you are building an unstoppable momentum. So if you fast forward less than 60 days later, Natalie, I realized my goal of running out of the hospital. And then I had to continue to go to outpatient therapy for another 6 months after I got home, along with being tutored all summer long in order to continue on to high school with the rest of my classmates. And this next part of my story is what I'm so excited for to tell you and your listeners because it really fits with what you're doing. And
Okay.
I think they'll get a lot of benefit out of it. However, I just wanted to pause there and see if you have any questions.
I mean, it's remarkable. And I love the true power of mindset, right? Which is what we're talking about. It's incredible. And congratulations for being such a powerful, strong person, and having the right support. Truly, you're step one. I think the first question, honestly, that came to my mind was like, do you snowboard still?
I don't anymore. I
You
have
don't.
since. I have
You,
since, and it was
you have.
right after my accident, the following season after my accident. I think it was more to prove to myself that I
Get
could
back on
do
the
it.
snow.
Yeah, and I really wanted to. So yeah, I was able to do it and everything. Just long story short, the my mom found out that I was sneaking runs in snowboarding, stealing or borrowing, as I would like to call it, my friend's snowboards and sneaking a run in here or there. And she found out, and I came home and she was crying. And as soon as I saw that, I already put my parents through enough
Yeah.
with my accident. I said, all right, I'm done. I'm all set. So no more after that point.
And even in your older age, I mean, I started skiing very late. I was like 28 or something.
Okay.
And not that my listeners need to hear this and maybe we'll edit it out or whatever, but like, I don't understand the whole thing about it. Like, when you start as old as I did, you don't have like a thrill for the speed. And so the entire way down, all I'm trying to do is stop myself. You
Well,
know?
I don't know. This is an important point. I mean, I don't know as if I would edit this out. This is good. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't like the speed. I don't want to fly down a hill. I find myself gripping and trying to stop myself from flying down the hill the entire time I'm going down something. And I do find it wildly interesting how people love this sport that you like spend an incredible amount of money to do, kill yourself just to get ready. It's like an hour just to get ready. There's like 1,000 layers of like, oh, I've got the bottom layer, the top layer, the under layer, then the top, then this, to like drive somewhere, park 1,000 miles away, get on some sort of like tram to get up to the top, then stand in line for this, stand in line for that, stand in line for this, to then get finally on the snow to stand in line to get on the lift, to then fly down a mountain 30 seconds later and then get back in line for another hour. Like, I don't know. I'm like, but it could be because
Different, different point.
right. It's just,
Different motivation. Yeah.
I'm older. So I see my friends who have been doing it as kids and they love flying down the hill, and like the exuberation they feel, the exhilarance that they feel in flying down the hill is the whole reason that they do all the steps before just to get there.
Yeah.
My flying down the hill was just like,
yeah,
what did I just do to experience that? Like, so I can't like.
There are other ways. All right. So the reason why I don't do it anymore. So yeah, I don't want to make my mom cry. Who wants that? But also I just took that energy and that focus and determination and applied it elsewhere. So that's really what I do to this day. So if you fast forward less than 18 months after finishing my rehab from my snowboarding accident, I got my start into real estate. And that was when I was 16.
I was going to say when you were 16. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was 16. And my dad, right around that time, was playing with the idea of having a bird dog, if you will. I think you'll be familiar with that term. Go out and knock on the doors of pre-foreclosure doors or homeowners that have received the notice of default letter from the bank, meaning they had missed several payments on their loan and the bank still hadn't foreclosed. So it was perfect for me because it was right around the time when I was getting my driver's license. And I grew up in a real estate family, if you will. So I was always around it. However, the one book that got me started and made me interested, like come to my dad and say, all right, I want to help. What can I do? Was Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. So I think the big flashy term is, oh yeah, Rich Dad Poor Dad is a book, but that wasn't the book for me. That wasn't the one that got me started. It was Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. Great book. So I would go out to these homes and knock on these doors and try to set up meetings for our investor to meet with them the following week about potentially buying their home.
Okay.
And when I was starting, I didn't have a lot of success. I got a lot of doors slammed in my face. And I didn't look at that as a bad thing because what that taught me is, okay, don't do that. That's what you shouldn't do. So shortly after I started, my dad flew my cousin Mike and I out to California to shadow the number one guy, Colin, his name was, that was having success with these pre-foreclosure doors or notice to default doors. So once I saw his approach and how it differed from mine, once I got home, I changed my approach and immediately I started seeing a lot of success and setting up a lot of meetings. And then subsequently, the investor that I was setting the meetings for ended up buying a lot of these houses in these cities that I was door knocking in. So I continued doing that throughout the rest of high school. After high school, I got my real estate license, was helping buyers and sellers with sales, not rentals or anything, but sales, helping buyers and sellers. And then at the end of 2014, my dad approached me and he was buying homes creatively at that point. So, and I'm still buying and selling creatively on terms. And so I'll just give you like a 10,000 foot view, a few of the ways that we'll buy the homes creatively. So without using any of our cash or big investor down payments or signing personally, that's the most important thing on loans. So the first one is with a lease purchase or a rent to own. Well, that's how we'll buy it. It's basically a delayed cash sale. The second is we'll actually close on the home subject to someone's existing loan. And the third is if they don't have any debt on the property, we can structure principal only payments and again, also close on the home. So
we have to take that back. Number one, so to get a little bit more detail, because I think that this is very interesting to purchase property in this manner without obtaining loans from like a hard money lender, investors, or a regular lender. So you do a rent to own and you would set it up with the owner, do a year contract. Would you put a tenant in there?
Well, it's actually, so yeah, if it's just a regular lease purchase like you're describing, we would do more like a, just to keep it real basic, like a 36-month agreement. So on or before 36 months, we would cash them out, close on the loan, and like everything would be done after 36 months. And then once we have that agreement in place as an investor, we have equitable interest in the property. So we're able to go out there on the market and look for rent-to-own buyers. And that's where really I came into the picture. So my dad was starting to accumulate all of these properties, and he needed help with, at first, it was just getting them on the rent-to-own market. So not listing them conventionally as a realtor, but getting them on the rent-to-own market. So you know this as a mortgage broker, there's only a very limited portion of the market of the buyers out there who can walk into a bank and qualify for a loan, like 18 or 20% of the market. So the other 80%, I'm not saying they're all good in there. However, in there are a lot of people that have money saved for the down payment. They have great incomes that are able to support the home. Just for one reason or the other, they're not able to qualify for a loan. So we're getting them. That became marketing for the rent-to-own buyers became, oh shoot, I need help with handling all these calls from the buyers. And that's kind of where I came into the picture. Then over the course of several years, I really developed a process, a very particular process we like to call the buyer process, that we put the buyer through. That way they get to the end of their agreement and they're able to go forward and get their own loan. Now, something I haven't mentioned is ever since I got out of high school, Natalie, I've always had this voice in the back of my head, no matter what I'm doing, whether it was in high school doing doors, as a realtor helping people buy and sell. I've always had this voice in the back of my head that says, yeah, great, Nick, but what you really need to be doing is telling your story from stage and helping trauma survivors or accident or health challenge victims through their challenge get through to the other side and then thrive with the rest of their lives. So that voice has always been there. And in 2016, January 2016, I let my real estate license go.
Oh, okay.
And then in 2016, joined my dad full time as an investor. And in 2016, we started holding events where we had a few events once or twice a year for associates that we have all over the country to come in and just meet with us. We hold an event for a few days. I have, because of that, had the opportunity to tell my story from stage. And it's always been maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and that was it. And I always thought that was a big deal that I was able to get up and present for that amount of time. And I always thought, okay, I'm scratching that itch. However, not really. So in 2019, someone saw me tell my story, and up to that point, it was probably the longest that I told my story, maybe 15 or 20 minutes. She said, I'm not trying to steal you from your dad and your family real estate business. However, if you're ever looking to fine tune your message and bring it to another level so that you're able to have maximum impact, I can, and help the most amount of people, I can introduce you to a few coaches and mentors that have helped me along the way. So I wasn't ready yet because I was still going through I was in the final throes of a voice challenge, a challenge that I was having with my voice. However, and I don't have a challenge with my voice anymore, as you can tell. So I always hung on to her card. And then in May of 2021, I finally reached out to her and said, okay, I'm ready. What do I have to do? She referred me to her coach, one of her coaches and mentors, Trisha Brooke, who I had a call with. I had a consultation call, And I share with my goals and what I was looking to do. And I said, do you think that's possible? She said, yes. I was like, all right, great. What do you think I should do? She said, the speaker salon. And you commute to New York City for 6 weeks in a row. You get to work on stage with up to 10 or 15 other speakers. And you really get to work on a 10 to 15-minute talk and perfecting that. And then on the final week, on the 6th week, you get to perform it for TEDx organizers, podcast hosts, other event organizers, people who are looking for speakers to book. And she said, that's 25,000. I said, yes. I was able to get that together and give it to her.
Crazy.
And then actually during that, about halfway through the speaker salon, Trisha pitched the idea of what it would look like to work with her one-on-one. And she said she specializes in working with speakers, help them build out their speaker platform. I didn't even know what that was. However, I just knew I wanted more of her. So I said yes. And she said, that's 75,000. I said, I don't have that underneath my mattress, but give me a week and I'll figure it out. And I went and applied for financing. And 6 days later, I wired her the money. And I'm so glad that I did, because Trisha was the one who helped me launch Common Goal. And now I know what building a speaker platform is, because now I'm giving talks all over the country to brain injury associations and other organizations that support individuals that are going through trauma, 50 and 60-minute keynotes. If you would have told me 5 or 6 years ago that I'd be doing 50 and 60-minute keynotes without any notes, all from memory, I would have told you were crazy. But she was the one who helped me write these talks, and I'm so happy that I did.
Yeah, amazing. Truly incredible. And obviously that's your passion.
Absolutely. Like I said, from that first call with her, there's been no voice in the back of my head.
Right.
I mean, what that's evidence to me of is that I'm doing exactly what I was put on this earth to do.
Yeah. I'm going to take it back a little bit to the financing side of things, because we know that you have a lot of creative financing strategies for non-traditional home buyers. And what you had mentioned about the 3 different ways. And I'd like if you could break those down in a little bit more detail. So you named one was the lease to own, which makes sense, but after the lease is done, you still need to get some sort of financing, right? In order to actually purchase the property?
Yeah, let me take it back and drill down and go into a little bit more detail on those, because at the end, what I can do and what we're going over now is just like a 10,000 for view. But at the end, if they're interested, I can let them know how to go directly to our website. We have a free master's class that teaches them really all about how we buy and sell in terms. So that might be good at the end. I can give that away.
Yeah.
However we're buying, though, it's always the same, or usually the same. We're always selling it on a rent to own. And I'll just give you a little, just because that's kind of my specialty in working with the buyers and bringing them through a process so that they're able to get to the end and qualify for their own loan. So the rent to own program requires anywhere from 3 to 10% down payment of the purchase price. Simultaneously to getting them in the home, we also get them connected with a great credit enhancement company that's going to get back to us all and let us know how long it's going to be until they're mortgage ready after working with the credit enhancement company. And then we're just making sure that we're giving them plenty of time with the lease to qualify for a loan. Very, very simply, that's kind of how it goes.
Okay. Interesting. And what's the second way? You gave 3 different ways to finance.
Yeah, it's just how we buy. That's not even all of the ways that we buy, but those are just 3 to keep it basic and simple, like 3 of the ways that we buy. So One is lease purchase, two is
Right.
subject, will actually close on the home subject to someone's existing financing. And then third is if they don't have any debt on the property, we can actually close on it and then structure principal only payments back to the seller. So that's how we buy. And then
Seller financing.
yeah, we're
Basically,
already selling. It's called different things, but yes, that's a way. Yep.
Okay. And
Yeah.
then go through the second option again, where you close.
They keep their loan in place. The seller
Okay.
keeps the loan in place, and we close on it subject to their existing financing.
What does
So
that mean? Yeah.
their loan would remain in place, like still
Right.
has their name and everything. However,
Right.
we would own the home because we would close on it, and then we would be making payments on their behalf until such time that it's cashed out.
So they would keep the liability on the property. You would take their name off title?
They would, yeah. We would have all the liability on the property. They would just keep the loan in place under their name. That's what's called subject to, buying home subject to someone's existing financing. But like I said, I think this is kind of a good segue.
Yeah.
If they go to smartrealestatecoach.com
Okay.
forward slash master's class, they're able to get registered for the master's class and learn all about how we buy and sell on terms. And if by the end of that master's class, it's still like it makes sense to them and they want to learn more, or you want to learn more, you'll be able to take your next step after that.
Okay. Amazing.
So we just touched on it, but I figured I'd share that. And really what I went over today, as far as my story, Natalie, is just like a, believe it or not, again, a 10,000 foot view of the STEP system. But to learn all about the STEP system, they can go to my website, nickprefontaine.com/STEP. And they're going to learn all about support, trust, energy, and persistence. And especially if you have people out there that are listening that feel stuck and they don't know what to do, whether it's a challenge in their life or any kind of a health challenge or something happened, they don't know what to do. This is what we find is this is a great first step by going there, nickprefontaine.com/STEP and downloading STEP, the ebook, because once you take your first step, there will always be a next step.
Well, that's so amazing and incredibly inspiring. And thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing your expertise today. It's been really wonderful. And you gave a lot of great information to the audience. Hopefully those that it sparked interest with will go on and continue to learn more about it.
Awesome. This has been a blast, Natalie.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And take care. Take good care.
Thanks for listening to Mortgage on My Mind. If you're ready to start your mortgage journey or have any questions, I'd love to help. With 20 years of experience, I make the process as simple and stress-free as possible. Check the show notes for my contact info and don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast. Until next time, I'm Natalie Salins, here to help make your real estate dreams a reality.